Maybe
Hi,
about
hello.
like an hour. It'll be fine.
With Jennifer, I said, we'll pick up this conversation for the next 2 hours.
How's everyone doing? You're good? Happy second anniversary to the Punk Rock Museum. My name is George. I'm really excited to be here with everybody.
What's your last name, George?
My last name is George Stromboulopoulos. I used to host a punk show in TV and Canada and radio as well, and still do. So it's really nice to be here with all these people I've interviewed. I think everybody, the first person I ever interviewed was Jennifer Finch, by the way.
Hello.
So Jennifer Finch, L7. Edward Colver is here. So many
Wait,
of
how
us
come you
know
introduced
his
Jennifer
music from
Finch?
him.
How come you introduced Jennifer Finch?
What? I just did.
No, as your first interview.
Oh, it was my first interview. Yeah. Wait, what? Why?
I was
Why?
many people's first interview,
Very first interview.
if you know what I mean.
You all know Mike. You all know
First
Mike.
interview.
Kevin Lyman. Of course, you know Jack Grisham and Vinnie Fiorello. Right. It's really good.
Of course, you know Jack Grisham.
Yeah, of course. We should. You should.
Take it easy. I moved to the corner, just where I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna
You
sit back.
you can't be quiet if you were in the other room.
Let's see how this will go. First of all, Mike. I mean, second anniversary. Congratulations. How do you
Thanks. Congratulations to everybody involved with the museum. How do I feel?
It wasn't supposed
I
to
feel
be-
hot and overdressed.
feel? Do you?
Mhm.
It's an anniversary.
I know. I thought this was a formal occasion.
In your initial view, this museum wasn't supposed to be this big, was it? In terms of space, did it just keep growing?
It's a building, George.
But weren't you looking for smaller
doesn't-
spaces?
Well, yeah, but no. This is the exact same space we started in. Other spaces look too small. Remember Lisa Brownlee? We looked at small places, and it wouldn't make sense. We wouldn't have been able to fit Oi in here, or lesbian bluegrass.
Which you really wanted to.
We had to cut a few things.
Your perspective on this museum, a couple of years being here, seeing how it's growing, seeing the people coming in. What sense are you getting?
This is Vinny, by the way.
Hi. The museum, when it starts as an idea, Mike had called and said, I have this idea for a retail shop. And then it turned into, hey, now it's a museum.
Retail shop.
Yeah, but yeah, punk
course.
shop, Las Vegas punk shop, right?
Ugh.
And,
I know what you're doing.
and to see it grow from just the idea into a 12,000 square foot building, 5 decades of punk rock inside it, it's been amazing. But it continues to grow. The story of punk rock hasn't ended. It continues to go. So the museum's a living museum, and it's awesome to be a part of that and seeing it grow and go forward.
So much of us who didn't grow up in a city like LA or New York when it was starting, or London, we know this from zines or photographs or word of mouth that were being passed around. Edward, you took so many of the photos. I know that in Toronto, when I was a kid seeing your photos, it really reached us. For you, when you were in those early days here, was around 78 your first shows that you were going to here?
Yeah.
What was your sense of what was happening in punk at the time, and could you have ever imagined to be a place like this?
Oh, no, not at all.
And who's that?
Hmm?
Who's that?
Oh, this is Dexter. I brought my own security. No, I never would have imagined that it would become history. Like, I shot a lot of photos, and I would have shot twice as many if I'd known what would happen.
Right.
You know, people didn't care about it. They didn't like it. You know, I did.
Right, we get a little closer to the mic. People couldn't hear. They didn't like. The people really didn't like the scene at the time.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
They didn't like punks. They didn't like the music. Couldn't understand it. Couldn't see any validity to it.
I couldn't either.
What made you see the validity in it?
Well, since I was 15, it's like, this is the best kind of music. It's just the best kind. It's smarter, better songs, written by cooler people who are drunks and alcoholics. So it was so much better than anything we heard on the radio. It's just crazy. How could you not like this?
Jennifer Finch, you have a line that really hits me when you said punk was your get out of Van Halen free card.
It truly was.
Can you talk about your connection to the scene, to the music?
Yeah, you know, I grew up in West Los Angeles, which at the time was a working class neighborhood, and music, people centered themselves around music, and there was a lot of, you know, bullying to keep people homogenized, to keep them looking the same, and that was kind of one of the things that was going on. Of course, they all joined Beowulf after that, and other bands that came out, but yeah.
Did you see his band early?
Of course.
Yeah.
I have actually slept in parking lots in different generations with every person on this panel. including the dog.
Jack, could you have imagined all these years later there'd be a museum and people would travel around from around the world to see this, and this would mean so much to them?
No, I would have been a lot nicer to people. I believed you. That's I got a lot of problems with a lot of people on the walls in here, and I have no problem telling people on my tour how much I dislike most of these people. But I believed it. Like when they said stuff, like the lyrics, like I thought they were telling the truth. Like I'm thinking, oh, comrade, I'm in. Let's go. And then I later found out that some of them weren't, and it was very upsetting.
I believed you in Code Blue. I believed all that shit.
I was a kid.
Even worse.
So
Yeah.
were we.
Yeah.
All kids.
Take it easy.
So,
That's sad.
so many reasons why people are connected to what happens here is because of the tours that Kevin, you put on Warped Tour and other stuff as well. When you wander these hallways, and we just did this tour with you, and seeing your connection to all these bands and all these early days, what do you make of a place like this? And here we are 2 years in.
Jack's a lot nicer now.
Thank you.
Me and you always. I got turned on to punk rock in like 1979 for me. I was living in a little hippie town called Claremont. It was mostly known for Grateful Dead and things like that. And I met my first punk rocker. He had the best punk rock name. His name was Xerox Clone. And he was this kid that kind of turned me on to this music. And you know, of course, he was getting shit thrown at him by the football players in high school and stuff. And I was kind of navigating in between this world that I was kind of around, and I didn't really fit in quite anywhere. And I met him, and he started telling me about some of these bands. Shortly thereafter, living about an hour outside of LA, we started drifting into LA to start to watch bands and see things, the Whiskey, the Starwood, some of these venues there. And for me, it was like, as a fan, I was learning, I was exploring, kind of figuring out who I was. But when I really realized I wanted to do this for the rest of my life was the first day I got to work a show. When I got to work that first punk rock show, and I was like, this is where I want to be my whole life. I didn't want to be in that
very long
club.
hair.
What?
You had very long hair.
I had, oh yeah, I didn't get my ass kicked because it was a violent scene in LA, because I was the weird dude with Doc Martens, cut off overalls, long hair,
No shirt.
no shirt, 27 bracelets, and a cowboy hat. So even the lads in the U.S. Skins were like, we don't want to fuck with that guy. We don't know who he is, you know. And then hooking back up with Golden Voice in L.A., Paul Tollett, who I went to college with, and pretty much just took off from there. And shortly was running 320 shows a year in L.A. and have stories with all these people, and except for Ed, I'm just meeting. And early on, I remember the first time you coming down, Mike, and playing, I think Country Club maybe. Jennifer Finch and her friends shooting BB guns at other people after a show we did in Hollywood and at a swim party.
Time we took it.
Jack always thinking he wasn't
ecstasy
getting paid
in Florida.
enough. Always thinking Gary Tobar was ripping him off, or someone was.
He wasn't.
And then later on, lucky enough to get to work with Vinnie when I kind of went into management with Les and Jake after starting the Warped Tour and things like that. But it really exposed me to this music. But I was working everything. I wanted to work every night of the week. So a lot of my friends only wanted to work punk rock. I was working metal. I was working blues shows, anything to get exposure to live music. But I always felt more at home in a little bit of that controlled chaos of Warped Tour, or Warped Tour of the club of punk rock.
Well, there's also community. People were working together differently, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I always say punk rock, if there was a half a pizza out back, everyone shared the half a pizza. And you always moved your drum kits, which were cool for the opening acts. The metal bands were always hazing the younger bands. It was,
We can stop right there, because none of these punk rock bands move their drum kits these days.
well,
Now, I'm just throwing that out there. That's one of my biggest complaints. I go play shows with these guys these days. They don't move their fucking drum kits. It's
Well, maybe we could-
unbelievable.
They don't steal people's drum kits either.
Well, whatever. I'm not talking about let me tell you something.
So there's good and bad in the different areas is what we're getting.
Jack
so
did
far.
steal Joe from the Vandals drum set early on.
It doesn't matter. The bottom line
You
is,
gave it back. You gave it back to him.
Eventually he got it back.
I'm just saying, it's crazy sometimes. I remember telling my buddy was working one of these shows, and he had, whatever, let's just draw, I'll be quiet. I'm going to sit right here in the corner.
Kevin, I want to tell you something, though, and people don't know this about the Warped Tour. Why my band did it so many times is because how he ran it was so fucking punk, where you never knew when you were going on. You only had to play a half hour. and you could really do anything you wanted to. Once in a while, you know, when someone would get shot, when someone lost an eye by Fletcher, you'd be like, okay, slow this down. But really, it was that cool of a tour.
You'd be waiting for that lineup, for that schedule to come out pretty last minute for a lot of these shows, right?
At yours.
You wouldn't know.
I mean, bringing the Warped Tour back's been a little different because I'm trying to do it without taking it on the road. I'm not telling people what day people are playing. I'm not going to tell them what time they're playing until
That's
the
just
fans
being-
will
that's
know
just
the
being
day of the show. What?
That's just kind of being an asshole.
Well, in some ways,
Way to
now being
treat
a full-time
50-year-olds.
in some ways now, the other day someone says, you must be a sadist to your, I'm a full-time professor at the University of Southern California teaching 5 class. They go, you must be a sadist to your students the way you treat these bands.
I got a Warped Tour story. I got a couple of them.
Okay.
So Fresno, they're throwing trash at this young band, and this young band's crying because they're throwing shit at them, right? Which is like, come on, man, they're just throwing some trash, right? It's no big deal. So they say no trash throwing, right? But then I look and they've thrown a condom. There's been throwing some condoms out. So, and if Kevin remembers this, so I grab the mic, I go, hey, look, you guys are throwing condoms. I'm stoked you're doing this, but some of you are probably afraid to ask your parents how to put them on or what's going on. I go, so I got $50 if somebody wants to jump up on here and get it together and put a condom on and show us what's going on. I got 50. So this kid jumps up, pulls his pants down.
What do you mean by kid, by the way? How old was this kid?
Well, I'm 63,
So
so
he-
he's a kid.
So he could have been 35, right?
Could have been an episode
I'm
of
not-
Catch a Predator.
I can't see. All right, of legal age, as far as I can tell. And so he gets it together and he puts his condom on. Everybody fucking cheer. Excellent theater, great theater. And then we walk off, and Kevin says, "Great show. Cops are looking for you." And so. So while they were trying to get me for solicitation because I gave him 50 to jerk off.
Oh.
And that's not a good crime to get arrested for. It just doesn't look good on the
That's a
docket.
hot story, though. Speaking of throwing trash, Jack, you remember that time you threw some trash, a beer bottle, at the cop car?
Man, can we just
This
focus
is
on-
fun.
let's
You're
focus
telling
on
stories.
something.
And was this what it was like in the early days? Was it as raucous as this at the shows you were trying to document?
Yeah.
The beer bottle's the power up. That's the key to get it going. Do you know what I'm saying? It's
That-
like
that
the
starts
key.
the fight.
Everything goes whatever, and then one beer bottle goes, and then it just explodes.
Yeah, but it ruined the Hollywood punk scene, apparently. You came up from the beat. What's it? It's
All right, let's
it's
finish
documented.
the show.
Jack,
Finish
you
the
should be proud of this stuff.
Moving
It's good.
on.
Famous show.
Moving on.
Famous show.
Moving on.
When I tell a story about you, it's no good.
You're
but when
not
you tell it,
you're not the
I
in
know.
charge. All right,
You
moving
know,
on.
in a way,
I'm entertaining.
when you're building a museum and you recognize that this is the energy and the spirit of it, it's not what most museums are like. Most museums don't document this kind of attitude, this kind of behavior, these kinds of moments, these kinds of histories. A lot of it born from trauma, a lot of it born from escape, a lot of it born from kids who didn't have homes that they were going to. What was the philosophy of trying to put a museum together, recognizing you just can't clean it up and make it just, oh, look at these great flyers?
It just needed to happen. There wasn't anything like it. There was great exhibits of the 70s punk scene and early 80s, but I wanted to be inclusive because punk rock, it's gotten bigger, but there's still tons of bands playing in their basements or the garages, and they're doing drugs and drinking, and so the punk rock spirit's always been there. It was just so obvious to build a punk rock museum, and there's a mob museum which does very well, and there's no mob fans around the world. We have punk fans all around the world.
I mean, there's some mob fans, and
You
some of
know-
them are in government, but yeah, it happens.
Yeah, I mean, they're not really fans. They don't wear they don't wear shirts.
Yeah.
that say Capone on them.
That's right. But trying to keep the spirit and trying to keep it authentic. What kind of conversations were you and the whole crew having to make sure that?
Well, everyone who started this were all lifers.
Yeah.
So it was clearly going to be authentic. Everyone who's involved has been doing this for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't quit.
45.
45, I wasn't going to say anything. But,
I was stoked. I remember when they asked me to come, I didn't want to go. Because I thought, fuck, Fat Mike's making a punk rock museum. This blows. It's like, I can't even be seen in there. I mean, come on. No one thought that in here? I'm the only person who's an asshole in this
No,
room?
everyone thought that.
No, not everyone. Not everyone.
And I'm
We felt that too, as we were getting the museum together, remember during the pandemic?
okay, see?
Yeah.
I'm just saying what was in your head. So I'm thinking this blows, I'm not going. So then when I got here and I walked through the first thing, I started like, I'm like getting misty, you know? Oh my God. Because I'd see somebody's face that I hadn't seen in years. Like, and I'm thinking, oh God, because he's dead and he's not here anymore. And he's not there. And I'm walking by this club and all of a sudden I'd see a picture of the Mabuhay and I'm thinking, oh my God. Oh, I'm thinking, and all this shit just started coming. It was like fucking, what's that movie with the baseball girls? League of Their Own or some shit? That's what I thought. You know, if I was wearing like a little, you know, like a little, Mike, like a
There's
little
no
girl's
crying in
dress. Like, in there, I just call myself Kit and wander around downstairs crying. All right. You
There's
guys
no crying in baseball, Jack.
That's right. But there is in punk rock, 'cause I've seen it.
There is now for sure. You describe this as a love letter. It's a love letter, right?
It is most certainly. You know, it's like Mike said, we're 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades in, depending on who the person is, right? And it's a love letter to punk rock. I mean, punk rock. My mom and was my dad better. Taught me better than my parents did. Lifelong friends, lifelong career. Right now, I mean, how can it not be a love letter, right? Because punk rock music has given me everything. When I look around, it's given these people the same thing, and how can it not be? What Mike had said, it's how can you not have a punk rock museum? How can you not go, I love this music, I love the scene, I love the people, no matter how crazy they are, right?
Point it down there. Point it over there.
But, it's
I'm eccentric, Jack.
There's a difference.
I'll fucking Me Too you so quick.
Which everyone who comes here gets that same thing Jack gets.
Yeah.
It's some part of the museum. They're like, oh, this is my childhood.
I think that first room is really important. I think that first room is really important, and it automatically erases one of the things that you see and being in the media for so long, watching the way people tell the stories of these legends, is they tend to erase the contributions of people who weren't white men. And the moment you walk into that first room, you go, okay, so there's a different point of view for this.
That was my room.
That was your room.
That's
you
what I
see
designed.
Alice is the first person that you
I
see
wanted
when you're in
everyone to
there.
see Al's bag first.
It's the first person you see.
Yeah.
You experienced this, and it was never mind me talking about it, but when you first knew this museum was going to be a thing and you become a part of this, you know your role and what you've experienced. What were your thoughts about it and your experiences at the time?
Well, I did not come into it cynically. I knew that it had, I talked to Mike originally, and I knew that we come from a society where power trickles from the top, and we're lucky if we get it at the bottom. And we all work together to create community where it would come from the bottom and move up. And this museum represents that through the types of donations and loans. It is built by a community, not by a specific narrator, which is what you're going to see in other museums. They're going to do what they need to do to get their investors to give money, and if that is just telling the story of a white man, white man saves world, it will be, and this museum is not that.
All right. However,
Okay, that's a
however, I was listening to a Sri Lankan comedian
Right.
this morning, and he informed me that there were less white people in the world than people of color. So I am now identifying as a person without color, the minority. So
That we don't endorse. We
Right,
don't
now-
endorse that point of view.
Now,
We don't endorse that. I don't endorse that part of it.
yeah, but listen,
The true color
this
comes
is how
out.
punk rock's really changed, because something like that used to be funny.
Well, I'm
Well,
just
the culture's changed.
yeah. We
Take
can
it
have an
easy.
experience where there's multiple stories being told.
Right.
We don't have to have a single narrative. That's my point, Jack.
Come on.
But that's what's
Come
the
on.
beauty
Can we have
of the
some fun?
tours.
Yes.
Every person in a band who does a tour, they're all different stories.
Yeah, the tour that we were on today, you were telling these amazing stories behind the scenes of how this became an industry that reached people who didn't grow up in one of these two
For
communities.
me, it was, I took my tour, I'm going to repeat myself. I'd be in those clubs at night. It was a very violent scene, but I would listen to those bands and the words they were saying and how important those words were. And my mission was one, I want to figure out how to get this to those people in Montana, those people in Texas, those people that weren't having shows. But on the other end, how to reduce the potential of violence at these shows, because there was so much around those shows. And my plan was to take it out into the sunshine, and because 90% of the problems were caused by in the cover of darkness at these clubs. If I could bring that music out to more people, they would, and not worry about getting their asses kicked right at
What
it.
lyrics are you talking about? Suicidal Tendencies? G.G. Allen?
Well,
The Dickies?
Not really Bad Religion.
Yeah.
You know, Kennedy's.
Kennedy's.
When Fishbone kind of stepped into the
thought
scene,
DK
which
was
was the
short.
first really African that I remember being on stage with them and the shit they took from that scene, but they were saying stuff
Party
to
at Ground
me.
Zero, you wanted those lyrics to.
Well, sure.
But as you know,
Pretty
big-
relevant actually in
a
some
big,
ways.
a big part of punk
This
was
is
being
taking a bad
connected to
turn.
politics.
I produced their last album.
Every generation of music speaks to
I
a
was just
certain
kidding.
age
G.G. Allen, you
in
want
their
those
own
lyrics?
way.
Or suicide?
You know,
No, no.
there's bands, and that's what I learned. Those bands spoke to me a certain way, and all through my life, those other bands later on, whether they're My Chemical Romance, or
Stealing
those bands,
People's Mail.
they spoke the same way. And if I can
Lynch the
bring that
Landlord.
out to people, and still give you guys a platform once in a while to come
Yeah.
out and be part of, that was important to me.
Yeah.
When did you shift to realize that you weren't just going to be a player in a band, but you were going to have a band, but you're going to be part of the building of this genre and having labels and giving other people
It wasn't
platforms?
the plan. It just
But when did it start to happen in your mind?
well,
Right?
something. I saw bands on tour like Propaganda,
Yeah.
Lagwagon. These are good bands. Shit, I could do this too. It was it was no risk. It was just seemed obvious. There was Lookout and Epitaph and a couple labels, and shit, I should do one too.
Propaganda had a big impact on your label, didn't they?
Well, yeah, they started the fucking sound.
Yeah.
I mean, they did. If you notice,
It
How to
changed.
Clean Everything,
Mhm.
with the you know, all those that. What record came after that was Punkadelic. It's like I clearly was so influenced by them. Before that, it was White Trash. They invented the fat sound
The Fat Record sound.
and the bad attitude.
But I think that
No.
they also but really they
They changed
reflect
so many people's lives because their lyrics.
And lyric-
They were
exactly.
They were the most important band on Fat lyrically.
yeah, and I think that's was to what you're getting at, right?
Well, you know, when you were working so many nights, you would just start to see, to me, that was making more sense than, like you say, Leatherwolf, Warrant, Poison, that I was working on those
Beowulf.
other nights of the things. I felt this music was pretty relevant. You know?
We're hearing a lot about the dynamic within the scenes at the time, specifically LA, but of course it was happening in a lot of different places. Edward, could you ever fathom that your photographs are going to reach so many people around the world and be a window into something happening here that they would never otherwise have a connection to?
It's rather unbelievable, and you know, it has to do with the advent of the internet and stuff. You know, I had never been on a computer, and my attorney was doing some little T-shirt things and stuff, and they set up a Facebook page, and my wife Karen over there got me a iPhone, and I got on Facebook, and I swear every time I logged on, I'd see my photos with no credit. They'd gone around the world, and I had no idea. It kind of blew my mind. It was like I'd see them all the time, never credited. You know, that's kind of a drag.
Yeah, but
Good name for a
influenced so
song,
many
too.
people.
Hmm?
So many people.
Yeah, they know the photos. They don't have an idea that I shot them.
No. So we don't want to focus so much just on the past. I think the present and the future of punk rock is really important too, because
Photos from the future. Let's talk about
photos
that.
from the future.
Yeah,
What have you
well-
got that hasn't happened yet? That's in the green room right now. That's what I'm looking for. Just talk about punk as a vibrant scene today, and how it's gone through. This genre is 45, 50 years old, depending on when you pick your start date for it. But it's been around long enough now that it has completely evolved. What is the present in the of this genre now? The genres.
I'll go real quick. It's that it's everything in the past, and it's cherry picked to influence, right? If you talk to Gerard from My Chemical Romance, some people be like, "That's not punk rock," but if you actually, talk to him, and it's the influences go down the line, right? It's obvious the Misfits influence, but there's a ton and a slew, and its bands now are cherry picking what had come before and using it and blending it to do something else, whether it's Scowl, Linda Linda's, The Interrupters. I mean, those are all bands that are happening right now, but are using influences from the 4 decades past to continue the punk rock story.
Even Idols and Amo, but you think about what Sleaford and Kneecap are doing, that there's so much of what they're doing that even though it's also heavily influenced by hip-hop, it's very punk in its core in a lot of ways. The bands that you're seeing now, who you would have influenced.
I like to not really think about it that much. I don't think about really punk rock as a music source. I think of it as an energy of disruption, and that floats through so many genres right now. I think we've given to so many genres of art, even in performance, that it goes beyond just like Emil and the Sniffers are an incredible band doing incredible things, but so many artists are out there doing great stuff.
I just produced this band called the Dollheads from Vegas.
Yeah.
And
They're
I went-
playing today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I went to a studio on the east side. And it was, they're 14, 15, 17, and amazing band. And they're playing in their garage, and they're just rocking out. And it's, oh, right, this is punk rock. This is how we all started. So it was just wonderful to see them and how excited they are to play. Joan Jett was their favorite, band, L7, and they're just rocking out. I just had a good time. When I produced Fishbone, it's like, man, these guys are old. And Dollheads, it's cool. It was really fun for me.
You have Joan Jett. Once you get past that first room, Joan Jett is right there with the Ramones in that very first walkway
Yep. She's the coolest person in rock and roll.
in rock and roll.
Yeah, in the whole business.
And 1974 is when both those bands were formed, roughly, right?
Runaways and Ramones both
Yeah.
put out records the same year.
And so she's really important to this.
Yeah, but the Ramones record was better.
Yeah, well, better record. Joan Jett, important to you?
Important, as is Patti Smith, who's also represented in that first room.
Yeah. Yeah, that piss-
And the artists that help create these looks, like Arturo Vega and other people
Yeah.
are in that room also.
Yeah.
Vivian.
I know that's not what
Vivian.
you were asking.
No, I'm asking, I don't want an answer that I want. I want your answer.
No.
Yeah.
But Joan Jett, the Runaways were the most important
Yeah.
because first all-girl rock band, and they did it themselves.
Yeah.
Did
And,
they?
Yeah, Kim Fowley is a
I
fucking
think that
shithead.
they did what they had to do. They
Yeah.
did what they needed to
They
do
did-
at the
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And it made sense to
And it
them.
made
No,
sense.
what I meant to say is when she put out I Love Rock and Roll, all 23 major labels turned her down, and she had a 10 million single sale. She sold 10 million records on Black Heart Records.
Yeah, as an indie.
She did that on her own.
Yeah. And
That's incredible.
That is incredible.
yeah, I mean, that Ramones logo is Arturo, right? And I think that's the key to this, too, is that the community that it built and the fans, so many of you here who it inform a big part of your life, even if you don't make music in some way, it would impact you. You got a lot of shit on the Warped Tour when you brought
I
bands
got a
out.
lot of shit doing everything in life.
Well, there was just a lot of talk about, we're seeing it playfully and not so playfully on here, about what punk is and how you do it and what is a sellout, what is not. You talked a little bit about that.
I just say, for me, it's not a look, it's not a fashion, it's what's in your heart, and you never know where that's going to come from and who has it. I mean, I take a shit right here from a lot of people, but I thought Katy Perry was pretty punk coming on Warped Tour.
Yeah.
She got up there and I challenged her every day and put her in front of bands. It wasn't easy. I didn't make it easy. I put her in that time frame. You'd put her on right after Bring Me the Horizon or with these bands, and then she actually came and played that 15th anniversary show that you said not very nice things about her, but she showed up and played with Pennywise.
It was a joke, and it wasn't.
Pennywise. She played with Pennywise, NOFX, I think Bad Religion, and Ice-T, and there's Katy Perry showing up to do something for Music
Because she's
Cares.
showing up because you guys had the cool thing and she's knows what cool looks like, and she showed up for that.
And
But she was there early,
Okay.
though. But she was there before, right?
Well, she put in the hard work. This is before Kiss the Girl came out. I was actually doing a movie called Endless Bummer. It was a soundtrack, and Joan Jett was in the movie, and Keith Morris was in the movie, Lee Ving was in the movie. It was about a stolen surfboard, and I needed a song. So I actually was in New York bouncing around, talking about Warped, seeing what was going on. And I asked a guy named Jason Flom, do you have anything from like the 82, 83 time frame? I'm looking for songs. And he goes, well, I got this girl, Katy Perry. She did a Outfield, Use Your Love was the song.
Oh, she's getting too much pressure.
Cover. And, and he goes, I'll sell you the song for $500 for the movie. And I said, sure. And I said, ask her what else she did. And he goes, well, she's been dropped a few times. She has this song, You Were So Gay, the video. And I go, you know what? I think she'd be kind of cool on Warped Tour. And he was like, what? I go, I just kind of got a feeling. I always like to shake it up because if you just put the same thing on Warped Tour, you had to make it as eclectic as possible.
Like
and you
Jeffree
get
Star.
What?
Jeffree Star.
Well, Jeffree Star was probably.
Who are the uncool bands on the Warped Tour? Who are the bands that?
I think the band,
Or the
and I don't
people
go
who
that.
sang
The only
for a
one
band.
was the only uncool band was Alien Ant Farm.
Yeah, that's one of them.
Well,
And let me
because-
tell you what Kevin did.
Because Alien Ant Farm had that hit song, Smooth Operator, or not
Smooth
Smooth, no,
Criminal.
that's Sade.
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson
Yeah.
song. And
Sade on the Warped.
Sade would have been punk rock, but
I can tell the story in
He
30
walked up
seconds.
to my bus and he said, "Man, our song's like #1. Dude, you got to let us like move up to the main stage." And I said, "Well, who would you take off that main stage?"
And you have to tell them.
What?
And you have to tell the band.
And and you have to go tell the band that you're moving, and because I don't move people on stages.
Who was the band?
And they go, well, the smallest band, and this is a singer, man. He goes, smallest band's H2O.
Yeah.
That just so happened that I was managing H2O as well as Less Than Jake at that time. And I go, oh, this is going to go down good. And
You have to tell him.
I go, why don't you go tell him? And he actually had the balls to walk up and tell H2O, was also hanging out with all of you and Rancid and everything, and was like, you guys need to get off the main stage. We're going to start there tomorrow. I had to put that kid in protective custody
Yeah.
in my bus for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, that's right.
But for me, it was more about teaching lessons. But
If you had to pick a band, H2O would be the band.
no, but it was also having those It was having
They need a Madonna cover. for
It was
fuck's
taking
sake.
those hard conversations, or like in 1997, I think Sugar Ray was on Warped Tour. They were on a 1-foot stage. They were selling 70,000 records a week at that point. Everyone was yelling at me to move them to a main stage, and I'm like, dude, like I'm not doing it. Like if they have to leave the tour, I totally understand. The smallest band that year would have been Blink-182, and. Well, you know what? And I said, look, I got to go talk to Mark because he was in a band called the Shrinky Dinks, we probably all remember from Orange County. And I walked on the bus and I said, dude, you guys have one fly right now. That might be your only hit. You better write 2 or 3 of those before you try to move up to that main stage. And I give him credit because he stayed and played on that 1-foot stage
Yeah,
that
so
whole
did
summer.
Sum 41. A lot of bands.
Yeah, a lot of, and that's the thing. So really, but I don't think, like we called it, I alienated from 3,436 bands were doing this big research on Warped Tour.
But you also told, I forget the name of the band, but the kid's name was Sonny.
Oh, Skrillex! I
Yeah.
told him that if
Yeah,
he
he said-
told him if he didn't get his shit together, he was going to be changing oil at Jiffy Lube, and the guy became.
Well, it worked.
The
You
guy
got his
became
shit together.
The guy became Skrillex afterwards, and that next summer I said, you know,
And
he
who's the
showed-
biggest asshole? You just told me this story yesterday.
Which one?
Who's the biggest asshole who's ever on the Warped Tour? Do it. Say it. You just told the story about how every band hated him. He was the biggest dick. Don't say it. Fine.
What did I say?
He was in
Tell
a
us
show
more
called
Katy
Sons of
Perry
Anarchy.
stories.
Sons of Anarchy.
SOA, as some people know it. Never mind. You don't say it. Let's move on.
That diversity was important. I was covering the Warped Tour north of Toronto when NERD were on the bill, and I was interviewing Pharrell the moment the guy from Total Chaos jumped into the crowd and beat the shit out of a fan for throwing stuff on stage, and Pharrell ran beside me and lost his mind. He said, "Is this what happens at punk shows?" And I said, "If the guy in the audience is a dick, yeah, that's what'll happen." And he hugged members of Total Chaos. He was so impressed that, because one guy in the crowd was fucked up and he was pushing around another fan, and the guy in Total Chaos didn't like that and just beat the shit out of the bully. And I think it really changed Pharrell's idea of what a live show could be.
Yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of bands play that. You know, I guess. Wait a second, was that?
Nobody remembers them.
No, I don't know. Now you're spawning all these. I tried. The way I survived is I forget most things in life that were negative.
Agreed.
What are your hopes for the future of this place?
No.
You have no hopes for the future of this place?
I just hope it keeps going, keeps getting better and better. We're 12,000 square feet now. We're hoping to move into a building that's maybe 13,000 square feet.
How do you see what is punk evolving? Jennifer was talking about it being an energy. How are you seeing it evolving?
I see it, like the doll hits. I don't think punk just got bigger, but bands still play for the right reasons. They just want to play music, and they're not very good. And that's what you can do. You can be in a punk band. You don't have to know how to play.
A lot of the bands that we cover now are talking about the impact AI is going to have on them, and you hear a lot of, and you pop in certain genres are going to be more deeply affected by it. Do you think that there's something in punk that it can?
Pop punk, not here.
No pop punk
No, pop punk will be
affected by it.
homogenized,
Yeah.
but you can't homogenize crustcore.
No, you definitely not, and you also can't recreate this. This has got to be live. This has got to be a direct relationship with real people. Don't you think?
Yes. Well, yeah, you can't have a computer on stage with one person pushing buttons. That would never work.
Sometimes it works, just not in this genre. You're working with getting new bands on the bills. Do you have parameters now of what is acceptable to get on a Warped Tour stage?
No, it was interesting. This past year, I really, like I said, I want to pay some homage to the past. There's a lot of great festivals out there that book the legends of punk rock. There's Punk in the Park, there's a lot of these great festivals. I support Cameron and those people as much as anyone. I help them. I didn't want, for when I brought Warp back for these shows, it was like you pay homage to the past in some way, but for me, it's always about looking forward to the future of music and community. And that's what I'm really trying to re-engage, this new, younger audience. Give them a good ticket price. When I came back, I know ticket prices are not $15 like the first Warp Tour, but I said $149.99 two-day festival price, including fees. You know, no, when you see festivals now charging $400, $500 for 2 days or higher or 1 day, I was like, we're now alienating 90% of the people that will be able to go and explore new music sometimes at these events. So timing could be good. I guess sometimes I have timing with the economy, but you know what? It was interesting to come back, and I never expected the response to sell 40,000 tickets a day in DC without announcing a band, 81,000 in Long Beach, and we're about 80,000 tickets in Florida. And I said, it's all about, and I think most of those people, it might be their big days of the summer, so I got to deliver that and bring back as much of that Warped Tour. The bands will be in the tents. We're doing the canned food drives. We're doing nonprofits. We're having an acoustic stage. We're doing all these things that you don't really see at a lot of the festivals right now, because as the big companies that have taken over, they've become a little bit sterile. So it's a balance with me too. My partnership is with that company that does all the buttons and pushing, that puts on the biggest festivals in the world, Insomniac. But those owners and their people are really kind of like, okay, let's work with you on what you want to do. Lisa Johnson's here. It's cool because who's going to be building the museum down in Long Beach with us. They've let me bring back familiar faces. I'm going to have Mona and Lisa Brownlee, who was my tour manager for 24 years out there. I want the bands to become back, and it's nice because a lot of the bands are saying, well, you haven't told us what day. Well, they know what day they're playing, but they don't know what time. But we want to be there the other day to hang out with our friends, because festivals have become so much just in and out. You go to a festival, you leave. So that backstage area for me is becoming the barbecue. All the things we used to enjoy. You can come set up the poker table if you have it, Mike, and hang out. You're always welcome to do it. You know, I
ran poker.
You can help subsidize the next round of expansion here at the museum.
Subsidize? I don't know. Let's see. 20,000 tickets you sold? I mean, 200,000 tickets so far.
Yeah.
Times $150. It's $30 million. I don't think you need any subsidies.
Well, it costs a lot.
That's pretty good.
It costs.
That's some good numbers, Kev.
It's great numbers, but it does cost, that foot of fence and that stage costs the same as someone that charges $500 for a day.
I would open this up to anybody here. Do you think that there's also part of this excitement around this is the fact that people are craving something real, something authentic, and being connected to a real life gathering in a way that they haven't had for a long time? Or ever.
And it's the nostalgia of it all.
The nostalgia, I think, for sure would play a role, but a lot of these kids are going to be too young to know what we would have experienced back in those days. But do you think there is some element where people want something real and feeling human?
Well, yeah.
Jack, you're quiet again. Come on.
You want to be a part of it?
I'd like to feel human.
You like to? What, are you missing it? Because it seems to not be around as often as much.
I'm sorry.
No, but like you were saying, you think that people do want that.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
I don't. But we get that all the time. I mean, if you hang out with real people.
Yeah, but you know that not everybody has that. We hear lots of numbers coming out. There's a loneliness factor. People feel disconnected.
Well, people do. Yeah, punk rock is a church. I mean, this place is a church. The one good thing about church is that it's community, and people know each other and take care of each other when they're having a hard time. In normal society, that doesn't happen. In punk rock, that does happen. When the fires happened, we all raised money for Marco and other dude.
George from
George.
Molly.
Yeah, and we took care of our people. That's where all our benefits went to them. Not to Chris Shiflett so much, because he does okay.
Chris is okay. His band's okay.
Yeah. But punk rock is a community and it is a family, and that's what's so wonderful about it.
And I think that there's a lot of people who feel like they may not have that in music communities around in their neighborhoods anymore. Venues are going away. It's harder to find places to play.
And metalheads are dicks. They don't take care of each other.
Definitely not. Not the same way, for sure. But
You hear about those death metal bands from Sweden? Yeah.
They're burning churches.
some great music, though. Some great music.
Some of these bands are rough. Sorry, I sat quiet for a long time because my white comment didn't go over well.
Gee, I wonder why that wasn't.
Okay.
Carry on, Jack.
Because I'd sit here and listen. Some of these bands are fucking rough, man. Sponge. Do you remember Sponge? 16 Candles. So I was in the Joy Killer, and we went on tour with Sponge, and I'm thinking, oh, this is fucked. You know, it was like Brett Gerwitz. It's a radio thing. We're gonna go, and so got there and expected to get fucked around. Like basically from a band like that. It's like, oh, they don't got that ethic, blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you something. The first night, they said, when do you guys want to do a sound check? I go, we don't need a sound check. Don't worry about it. And they go, no, we'll hold doors. We'll hold doors so you guys make sure you get a sound check. So every night, those guys made sure we got a sound check. And every night, that band packed up the food that they got. They packed up their dinner for us. They put drinks together, and there was like, because they knew we didn't have any money. We're driving around in a van, and it's like they packed food for us. They made sure we got a sound check. They watched out for us like punks would watch out for somebody. And then I get with some of these bands, because now there's money in punk rock. There's money to be made in punk rock. So you get with these guys, and now it's become something else where they don't got that ethic, and they don't act like that,
Do you agree?
and they don't treat people like brothers, whatever, like humans, fellow humans, and to me it's rough, man. And sometimes I see these young bands, and the way they're going to move up the punk rock ladder is, let's get them on tour with TSOL, let's get them on tour with Bad Religion, let's get them on tour with this, and I watch and that's how these bands get their juice. And then they go, well, we played with all these old school bands, now we're also like, whatever. Sound like I'm bitching
Did they move
right now?
Did they move their drum kit for you?
No, they don't move the fucking drum.
You know the bands that are cool and you know the bands that aren't cool.
Let's define what punk rock is before we start saying punk rock's still going strong.
It's
I just thought I'd
it's
throw
great.
that out there.
It's great
All right.
music. Great music played by bad musicians who are drunk or on drugs.
Look, I just didn't want to do my tour tomorrow, so I'm trying to get you to send me home. So anyway,
You wanna
that's a bad joke. I don't like working. Anyway,
Is this description accurate?
No, you know who the cool bands are, and the bands in punk rock that aren't cool, they're the ones that get shoved away. They're the ones that get marginalized. But like of the bigger bands, I'm not going to talk about the really big bands, but Rancid, Rad Dudes, and Flogging Molly, and Dropkicks, and NOFX. I mean, one of our guys is a total prick.
do you move your drum set? You move your drum set for the opening?
Oh,
band?
fuck yeah.
You're so full of shit.
Oh.
My god. Aren't
No,
you, I thought you were
smelly.
supposed to- Aren't you supposed to be in hiding still for the last shit you said to somebody? Do I sound aggressive?
A little bit, but that's all right.
No, Smelly has never
leave
not
a lot
moved his
open
drum
to
set.
interpretation, let's say.
Jack, Smelly has never not moved his drum set. He always moves his drum set.
That's good. See, I like that. Yeah, just looking out for people. Know what I loved about punk rock? House parties. Fuck, man.
Oh, you want to talk about your house parties?
I like house parties.
I know. I read your book.
Yeah.
Well,
I hate having house parties.
What's
there's
the matter?
so, but
You
there's
would
so
destroy
many.
people's houses.
All right. I'm going to sit quietly now. I'm just saying, I miss that. Fuck, man. I miss not having security. I miss not having a backstage. I understand there's lawsuits and people fucking sue and all that, but I miss it. That's the part of it I miss.
But how
It's
long
nostalgia.
was that? But how long was how long was that window open? We
Years.
how many years?
Yeah, and it's still going on.
Well,
There's
Jack broke
kids.
the window.
Jack
It was
broke the
open for a long
window,
time.
that's right.
Look at man, I go to parties in my neighborhood still. Little kid punk bands that are fucking playing parties. It's fucking bitching.
Yeah,
man.
that's
I
what
love
I'm
it.
saying. Punk rock is
Now,
still
you can't-
alive.
but
It's
you
still
can't
there.
make a living off that.
So
You
we
can't make a
couldn't
living off
either.
it.
We
Yeah.
couldn't
I'm
either
telling you.
until
All right.
until Nirvana broke.
Look at you guys came to a round table. Somebody's got to be the square end.
And this is not round. This is not round, by the way.
on purpose.
It's like a football. That's not
I just
round
hey
either.
Jack, I
It's
do
not
want
a
to make
ball.
sure that you come down to Warp because I'm doing a book sign. A lot of books are coming out, so you'll bring some books and sign them and meet some people.
Yeah,
All right.
look at literature is the only place free speech is allowed these days is in books anymore.
Well, they're
That's
getting,
it.
but don't worry, Jack. They're getting burned too.
I
They're
know,
getting burned
right.
and
All right.
pulled from libraries. You mentioned Nirvana, and this is something I think that when people talk about punk, they forget that punk influence and post-punk set the stage for decades afterwards. Or even though people may not know they're influenced by punk, these punk bands were really influential to rock bands today. Talk about what
Let's
Nirvana
agree to
did.
disagree.
Yeah, they were fans of Flipper.
Do you,
Anybody on heroin is a fan of Flipper. And you had to be on heroin to enjoy that. band.
no, but you know what I'm
me.
saying? Like these bands are continually, like if you think about Pixies and replacements and their impact along with punk bands on Nirvana, and you said Nirvana's what helped make money for you guys?
Well, everybody. Everyone remembers the first time you heard "Smells Like Teen Spirit." I do. I remember the car I was in. It was a Joey Cape, and I was like, "This is one of the most amazing songs I've ever heard." And from that moment on, CDs were out, so you could make more money, but record labels could take chances on punk bands because Nirvana, they put a fucking dagger to the heart of every hair metal band. Fuck you guys. You don't have to be so weird and sexist and lame. And yeah, Nirvana, that was a great. I mean, Kurt Cobain was a fucking genius, and that record changed everything for every punk band. We were doing fine. We were making a living, but then it was like, woo.
It opened the door, right? I mean, as soon as Smells Like Teen Spirit was as big as it was, and then, oh, well, if they could do it, then let's start signing. And some people, you know, major labels are a bit scummy, you know, most of the time.
Are you looking at me?
But when it became that big, it was a signing just spree from the underground and up. And some of it worked and some of it didn't.
Videos were getting played more and more. Jennifer, your bands were being played. You're the first person I ever interviewed in music a lifetime ago, and because you had written a song about a woman race car driver, and no one, as you know, sports weren't really talking about stuff like that, and you had started to reach a different group of people, but it was right around that time when all these bands were happening. What do you remember from that moment being on stage? Don't laugh at me. No, what do you remember?
How would you remember that?
No, not remember the interview with me.
We already established not having memory is the only way any of us can be here today.
I do.
But you do. You do have one.
I do.
Yeah. Yes.
I forgot you said that.
You know what? I don't think anybody got into it to ever have a career
No
at
one.
the level we had a career. That was kind of the beauty of that generation. Literally, we were getting in vans, we were creating community, we were dreaming of maybe going to Europe, and then we did get the opportunity to eventually go do that. And we got to meet many, make those connections. So it was worth it. But, L7 never had that experience. I had a day job all the way through, and I still do, and that's kind of the reality of how it can lay out. You do what you believe in, and it happens.
Do you think not thinking you could make a career out of it gave you a freedom to do it differently?
I do think so.
You don't think about what you have to write to please people.
Yeah, and it certainly was, I didn't think, career is a very loose word, right? There were bands out there like the Cramps or the Ramones that clearly before were having, we'll call them careers.
The Ramones still drove in a van.
Yeah. Sonic Youth was signed before Nirvana, and so was Jane's Addiction.
Yeah, but they were both terrible bands.
I'm not judging music. I'm just saying what opened the.
That's all I do.
The being able to walk into a store in a mall and wear punk as a costume started there.
Right, help make it a business.
Yeah.
And make it a big business. What are your memories from that moment, Kev? From that era?
That era for me was, I was still working in all the venues, and it was changing a bit. And whether good bands or bad bands, we were doing 5 nights with the Ramones and 7 with Jane's Addiction. And for me, that pivoted the idea when I was asked to be the first stage manager of Lollapalooza in 1991 and going out across the country. And for me, it was like I was starting to think that there was something there for me in my mind, and watching Henry Rollins play at 1:20 in the afternoon every day and have, empty seats or an empty field out in front of him. And I go, wow, wouldn't it be cool if they got to play before Jane's Addiction one night? Just go on stage. And that's where I got to start getting the ideas of writing that set every day and mixing up the lineups. Because I'd watch people get on tours that I'd see come through. They kind of get lulled into the spot that they're placed sometimes. It really hit me in 1992 when Pearl Jam was playing second, and those venues would explode to this point of just natural energy. And then the next band was going to be Jesus and Mary Chain, to me one of the most boring bands in the world. And I knew that if I could hold the fort down until they got walked off stage and watch it Eddie, that we could get the place back in order. And then, of course, we talked about Nirvana, right? Yeah. Post that era, and then sitting at the Palladium working a show, and they were one of the opening acts. And Lisa sent me a photo recently where my head's like, of course, in the side fill, why I can't hear anymore, watching the audience and the band. and just watching Kurt and my mind just going, wow, this was pretty different and fucking cool.
Edward, a lot of the conversations here are people who've been on stage, who've made the music, played the shows, put on the shows. From somebody who was documenting it, you would have a different perspective on why it connected with people. Why do you think this group of genres, these subgenres, why do you think it became so impactful?
Yeah, probably because of the impact that it had on society and politics and even diet with some cases and stuff, which is also the same thing the original hippies did. They were anti-war and ecologically minded. That stuff just kind of transferred over, and the punks talk about kill the hippies, and it's like those are long-haired rednecks. The hippies are long gone. And they adopted a lot of the same stuff, which is kind of ironic and funny.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you think where we are in the world today, politically, you're back. Do you think that there's much conversation about where we are culturally
What I missed,
today?
fill me in.
Nothing. But we heard what you said when you walked by Kevin about the asshole. Do you think that punk has there's an opportunity here because of what's happening politically and do you think there's an appetite for people to talk about it in music again, this way?
No, I don't think there is. I raised $1 million for Kerry,
Yep.
Rock Against Bush.
I remember that.
That was a huge thing, and you could actually convince a Bush fan that they were wrong. It took about a half hour. You can't convince a Trump supporter of anything because truth isn't truth anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to bother. I mean, I think it's about taking care of your community and being good to people and just being a shining example of what we're supposed to do in the world. But
Leaving it to
I
Ken
would not
Casey.
do a rock against Trump right now.
We're leaving it to Ken Casey now.
Yeah.
Ken Casey,
Yeah,
yes,
he's going
let's hear it
for
for
it.
Ken Casey. He's
Yeah.
going
Yeah,
strong
yeah.
against Trump.
But
And they are a working class band, and they were on Rock Against Bush, and yes, firemen and cops love them, and he's the perfect voice. I'm not the voice for this fight. I mean, we all know how I feel,
Yeah,
but I had enough death threats with Rock Against Bush.
you did. Yeah. It's a very different world now, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm retired.
How long will you be retired?
I'm not really retired.
I don't think so.
You should come move to my neighborhood. You
I
wanna
am
see it.
in the summer.
Yeah, terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Terrifying.
Why,
You
because
have-
you live there?
Huh?
Because you live there?
Yeah, because
No, I will gladly
I go
play.
to the shooting range with a lot of these guys, so I made myself a shirt that says "Armed Socialist."
Oh.
It's terrifying. Anyway,
No, I have a new song called Huntington Beach Nazis.
yeah.
And because, I mean, fuck, they have a corner of two streets, Rhine and Heil Street. And there's
They
a bar.
really do.
Yeah, they really do. There's a bar called the Eagle's Nest.
Yeah.
There's a print shop called Swastickers.
Really?
No, I made those
That
last
part,
two
yeah.
things.
I just
they have white T-shirts and they print white on it. They look awesome.
Hey, I'll tell you, knowing this, whatever, I know you're not talking to me, but I'm going to talk to you for a second. So, knowing the shift really was, there's, I don't know, whatever, you can read this thing about the social hierarchy. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, but when they bombed the towers, TSOL was on tour when they bombed the towers. It was right in the middle. We're on tour, and so we're playing these shows. It's President Bush can shove it, whatever. Whatever president was, it was Bush, and the kids are like, yeah, and everyone's cheering shit. And then the towers go down, and then the whole consciousness of the country changed and went tribal. It switched into this level 3 tribal thinking, and then it was, hey, President Bush can shove it. And it was crickets. And we were looked at as traitors for saying that against the government here that we're living here. And that's
Bill
the
Maher got
difference.
canceled.
Yeah,
and it was worse than crickets because I was interviewing bands at Much Music right after that, and a couple of the punk bands and a few others, Backstreet Boys included, were talking about U.S. foreign policy. When those clips went to air, the death threats that came in for those bands and the labels asking all that stuff to be pulled off the air, it was 10 times what it used to be.
And it's 10 times that now.
Totally,
And it's
yeah.
worse now. And
Yeah.
that's what somebody asked me. They said, what's the big difference between punk those days and punk now? It's like, yeah, I don't get letters from kids. I never got a letter from a kid back then calling me a comic fuck for hating the government, you know? And I get them all the time now. I get them all the fucking time. But they send me emails, they send me whatever, and it's fucking, it's gnarly.
No, but when
man.
you're in the punk scene and you're a total fucking prick, like Justin's saying, we take care of
Yeah.
those people. They're fucking out. Get the fuck out of our country.
When you pull this stuff
Yeah, we
right
pulled all
away from the
anti-flag
museum.
stuff out of here.
All right, look, and now see what happened? He's leaving because of this.
Oh, you're a friend of Justin, AJ?
AJ's out.
All right, sorry. See
No,
what happens?
we do
I
have
bring
some
in the-
bands that we don't want in the museum.
Yeah. And how do you decide?
They ask me.
They ask you, and you're the final call?
No, just anti-flag with like, fuck that guy.
Yeah, totally.
What about homophobia? I see some homophobic bands downstairs, proudly
do?
displayed.
Playing?
Proudly displayed. Well, let's not get into that. I don't want to take anybody's heroes off pillars.
Well, a lot of bands had homophobic songs in the 80s. Not so much anymore.
But the committing of a crime is
Fang,
different.
Fang was a tough decision for us.
Yeah.
Because it's-
Kevin doesn't like this.
No, I don't, because my death threats all came when I put Eminem on the Warped Tour. I didn't get him over politics.
Different experience.
That's when
And
they started.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but I
And he was
apologize
cool.
for
He was
that.
so
I
cool.
It
told
turned out
him
cool,
sorry.
you know. But
No, you don't want to fuck with Ice-T.
Hey.
that's when Ice-T told me he's coming on Warped Tour and it was great. You know, we had a nice time.
I was in making a record one time, and I broke into it doesn't matter. I got into the Rolodex. Remember the Rolodexes, right? So, and there was Ice-T's phone number in the Rolodex. So I thought, fuck it, I'm gonna call Ice-T, right? So I call it, and it was so funny because it was when they had answering machines. And you'd call his number, he goes, your mama's so old, her titties give out powdered milk. I thought, oh, fuck. I called until the number was changed. I fucking loved it.
You
Anyway,
might be the reason for that.
Because of you.
Before we wrap up,
please.
Wrap up. That was a good one.
the future of the community. You talk about how it was an energy and it's a community. Where does it go from here, based on some of the stuff we're talking about? And maybe there's a need for people who don't feel like they just want to fall in line. They want to find a place where they can question, they can learn, they can grow. What is the role punk can play in that as it goes forward?
No.
No, of course.
No,
I'm not
the
answering
answer's
that.
No.
Punk doesn't have
You
a
can't
role
take
to
no
play.
for an answer?
I can. But,
What Kevin is doing, create space. Just create some space if you can.
so it's not a no. So there is a version of this.
I just every day I try to bring some joy to the world, making people laugh. Going to the grocery store and saying, "Oh, I forgot my adult diapers. Where are they?" Just whatever it is, just be friendly, make people happy. That's what we have to do. You can't. I mean,
That
it
depends.
sounds so unpunk, but it's all about love. And this country's turning into hate. It just seems so weird. How can anything be great if built on hate?
Love
You know,
and
I'm very
adult
grateful
diapers.
for getting what I got to do. And today it was thank you for guys exposing me to the steel drum band that played punk rock on the way in this morning.
cool.
And they're now the official band that we at Warped Tour in Long Beach. I took how quickly I could book something and do what I want.
Yes.
And I-
Fuck Alien Ant
I
Farm.
went and talked to their leader, texted my team and said, make space for them. They're going to be at the front gates at Warped Tour in Long Beach, and expose those young people who got to walk through the museum to the festival I created, that hopefully one day they'll all start their own festival.
That's why your Warped Tour was so fucking cool, because anyone could get on it.
Kevin says
If you
stage.
barbecue for the bands, you can come on tour.
Yeah, so, I just, you start reflecting back on, I hate to do it. It's going to be 65 next week, I think, 64, 65, and been able to do this for 45 years and kind of do it my own way, but learning how to navigate the times, too. You have to be able to shift with the times, but navigate through those cracks that still exist.
So it has a role. It still does have a role.
Absolutely.
For sure. Final thoughts, Jack.
You want Vinnie's first?
Let me, no, go on,
An
please. 'cause
excerpt
I'm
from your
going to
new
ruin
book,
it.
Jack.
So you go ahead. Go.
Where does punk rock go? As long as people are looking for a space to belong, to be creative, to not have any chain of like creativity on them, punk rock will always be. And it was for me, like I had said. It was, my parents. It was my best friend. It was everything to me. That feeling doesn't change. Kids now still feel like that. Like, I want that feeling to continue, and it's up to us to be able to give than the space. Like Mike with the doll heads show up. I'm going to produce. Kevin bringing bands on that are young. That's the spirit that we have to bring to allow people to feel part of it. That's how punk rock continues to grow. I mean, that's it. Indeed.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you. Jack passed the baton. That's a perfect way to end.
Vinny, I think you covered it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, George Strombo.
I know when he had to do that Instagram video that I was doing that tour with him. You notice we go George Strombo. It always speeds up. You just speed it up, and you'll get through it.
Oh, Jennifer is out of here.
Jennifer, where are you going?
Where are you going, Jan? Jennifer knows.
This ain't no fucking round table. I don't know what the fuck this is.
Rectangular.
Hey, you guys,
table.
thank you for always supporting this music as much as you guys have.
Agree to disagree.
You want to tell us your final thoughts?
No. I'm good.
It's not a round table.
Thank you.